It began on a Saturday morning that looked like any other. I had driven across town to pick up a secondhand bookshelf listed online. The seller, a woman named Vanessa, lived in a modest but cozy neighborhood not far from the city library. When I rang the bell, she answered the door with a warm smile. There was something in her eyes, a kind of cautious intelligence, like someone who had seen too much but still believed in kindness. "Michael, right?" she asked. "Yeah, you must be Vanessa. Come in. The bookshelf is in the garage." We walked through a narrow hallway decorated with watercolor landscapes. As I followed her into the garage, I noticed she moved with the grace of someone who used to dance. Maybe she still did. We talked as I inspected the furniture, just small talk, but her laughter lingered in my ears long after I loaded the bookshelf into my car. When I thanked her and was about to leave, she hesitated, then said, "You look familiar. Do you work at Harborview Technologies?" "I do," I replied, surprised. "How did you know?" "My ex-boyfriend, Greg, used to work in the same building. I used to wait for him in the lobby sometimes. Maybe I saw you there." I nodded, even though I didn't recall seeing her. Small world. Then she asked, almost too casually, "Do you know a woman named Natalie Evans?" I felt my throat tighten. Natalie was my wife. We had been married for 11 years. "Yeah," I said carefully. "That's my wife." Vanessa's eyes widened slightly, just enough to betray that she hadn't expected this answer. "Oh," she said. "I didn't know she was married." A silence followed that was too loud to ignore. "What do you mean?" I asked. She looked away, visibly uneasy. "I think we should sit down." We moved back to the kitchen. She poured us both coffee without asking, her hands slightly trembling. "Michael, I think your wife might be involved with my ex-boyfriend." I didn't know she was married. Greg never said. But I found messages, photos, things I shouldn't have seen. And when I confronted him, he admitted it. My coffee remained untouched. "When was this?" "About 4 months ago. I broke up with him 2 weeks later. I thought you should know. I wouldn't feel right keeping it to myself." It hit me like a sudden downpour. Cold, soaking, disorienting. But I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just sat there, letting the weight of her words sink in. "Do you still have those messages?" She nodded. "I never deleted them." She handed me her phone. I scrolled. There were texts from Natalie, unmistakable in tone and content, speaking about meetings, hotel rooms, and promises of a future. Some messages were from Greg, more explicit, naming her, referencing our street, our home. My home. I handed the phone back with steady hands. "Thank you for your honesty." She blinked, taken aback by my calm. "You're not angry?" "I am. Just not at you." As I stood to leave, she said, "If you ever want to talk, or, I don't know, just have a coffee, I'm around." I nodded. "I might take you up on that." When I got home, Natalie was in the kitchen, humming softly while slicing fruit. She smiled as I walked in. "Hey, honey, how was the trip?" "Fine," I said. "Got what I needed." I watched her move, graceful, efficient, familiar, and now alien. I studied her every blink, every glance, wondering how I had missed it. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more time, more information, and above all, control. This was no longer just a marriage. It was now a battlefield, and I intended to win. The days that followed were painfully normal. Natalie moved through them with the kind of peace only the blissfully deceitful possess. Every morning, she kissed my cheek before work. Every night, she asked about my day. Her rhythm hadn't changed, but mine had. I became a ghost in my own house, drifting silently, watching everything. I began collecting data, phone records, calendar entries. Her GPS history synced to the family iPad. At night, while she slept beside me, I would sit in the dim glow of the bathroom light, scrolling through evidence. One pattern emerged: Tuesdays and Fridays, always late meetings, always the same location pinged on GPS. A boutique hotel not far from her office. I didn't confront her. I wasn't ready. I created a new email under a pseudonym and sent a discreet message to a local private investigator. 2 days later, we met in the back of a quiet diner. His name was Mark. Gray hair, steady eyes, the kind of man who asked no unnecessary questions. "You want surveillance?" he asked, cutting to the point. "Yes. I want proof. Dates. Pictures. I want to know how deep this goes." He nodded. "You'll have it." Back home, I pretended to be the same man I had always been. A little distracted, Maybe I blamed work. Natalie was concerned, but not enough to probe. That was telling in itself. There was no guilt in her questions, only routine curiosity. By the end of the second week, Mark sent a file to the encrypted email. Photos of Natalie and Greg entering the hotel. Hand-holding. Laughing. One photo, a kiss outside the elevator, sent a jolt through my chest like a defibrillator. There it was. The undeniable truth. Still, I said nothing. I waited. I printed the photos and locked them in my briefcase. Each day, I crafted a future in my mind. Not one of revenge, not yet. Just a plan. Measured. Methodical. I knew this could not end with her confession. It had to end with clarity, my clarity. There had to be no doubt. Not for me. Not for her. Not for the people we both knew. Natalie had turned our marriage into a lie, and I would use every lie she told as a tool. It wasn't anger driving me now. It was purpose. 3 weeks into my silent preparation, I noticed a shift in Natalie. It began with the small things. The way she checked her phone more often, how her smile dimmed slightly when she looked at me. Something in her gut must have told her I was slipping away. I helped it along. I stopped initiating conversations. Let silence linger after her attempts at intimacy. When she asked about plans, I deferred. I started going out in the evenings, just drives, coffee shops, long walks by the lake, never saying where I was, never offering an explanation. She asked once, and I shrugged. Needed some air. It was a careful game. I didn't want confrontation. I wanted unease. I wanted her to feel the fabric of our marriage quietly unraveling without knowing which thread to grab. Then came the opportunity. My friend James invited us to a small dinner party. I told Natalie to come without me. Not feeling up to it, I said. She hesitated. They'll ask where you are. Tell them I had a work call. Or don't tell them anything. When she left, I waited 15 minutes, then headed out myself. I drove to the same party and parked down the street. I didn't intend to go inside. I wanted to see something else. And I did. After an hour, she left. Alone. But she didn't go home. I followed her at a safe distance. She drove across town, parked behind a restaurant, and waited. 5 minutes later, Greg appeared. He got into the passenger seat. They sat there for 20 minutes. No kiss. Just conversation. But I knew what I was seeing. She was trying to convince him of something. Maybe that she still had control. Maybe that she could juggle both lives. It was pathetic. And it was clarifying. The next morning, I made pancakes and coffee. Sat across from her like nothing had happened. Her eyes searched mine for warmth, for something to cling to. I gave her nothing. Michael, she said after a moment, are we okay? I looked at her, and for a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. Sure, I said. We're fine. She smiled, uncertain, and I let the silence grow roots. I didn't have to push hard anymore. Natalie was unraveling on her own. She began staying home more often, cooking elaborate dinners she never used to care about. She wore makeup on weekends now, even when we didn't have plans. She kissed me goodnight every evening, a little longer than before, searching for reassurance I wouldn't give. That was when she first cried. It was after dinner one night, both of us sipping wine on the back porch. I spoke very little. She kept trying to pull me into conversation, asking about old memories, about whether I still remembered our anniversary trip to Banff, the time she broke her heel in Venice. I nodded at all the right moments, gave half smiles where appropriate. And then she went quiet. When I turned to her, there were tears sliding down her cheeks. What's wrong? I asked, feigning concern. She tried to laugh, to wave it off, but her voice cracked. I don't know what's happening to us. You think something's happening? You barely look at me anymore, she whispered. You've changed. I took a long sip of wine, then set the glass down gently. So have you. She froze. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She didn't press. She couldn't. That night, I slept soundly. She didn't. The next day, Mark sent me something new. A video. Natalie, meeting Greg again, but this time it was different. She was arguing. Her gestures frantic, defensive. Greg looked exasperated. At one point, he pointed toward the street and walked off. She stood there, staring after him for a full minute before getting back into her car. The thread was breaking, and I was holding the spool. Vanessa messaged me later that day. Just a simple, hope you're okay. I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed, I think I'm almost ready to talk. It was 2 days before I responded to Vanessa's message. I told her I'd meet her at a cafe near the edge of the Old Town district. a place with low lighting and wooden booths that lent themselves to hushed tones and quiet confessions. We chose a table near the back, far from the windows, a kind of unspoken agreement between us. This was a conversation for shadows, not sunlight. She smiled when I arrived, but it was a reserved smile, the kind worn by someone who wasn't sure if they were friend or foe in the other's story. I nodded as I took a seat across from her. Neither of us ordered for a long minute. We just sat, surrounded by the clink of cutlery and distant espresso machines, two ghosts floating in a room of the living. I thought about not coming, I finally said. I thought about not asking, she replied. We both smiled then, something brittle but human passing between us. I've been collecting evidence, I continued. Photos, dates, calls. Her pattern hasn't changed much, but her confidence has. She's slipping, and I'm letting her. Vanessa looked down at her hands, then back up. It's strange, isn't it? To become part of someone else's story this way. I never wanted to be a wedge in someone's marriage. I thought I was just the girlfriend. Temporary. Casual. She made a choice, I said. You didn't. I still carry it, though. Her lies made me complicit. Unwilling, but complicit. You're not the one who promised me forever. We ordered coffee. Vanessa stirred hers absently, a silver ring on her middle finger tapping against the porcelain cup. So what now, she asked. I keep going, I said, until she breaks or confesses. She might not. I'm prepared for that too. Silence stretched between us again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was contemplative. We were two people orbiting the same betrayal, each scarred in different ways. You know, Vanessa said softly, it's been hard not to reach out again. After that day you came to my house, I kept wondering how you were coping. You seemed so calm, but also alone. I met her eyes. I was. And now I'm evolving. She smiled again, and this time it was different. Warmer. Sadder. I envy that. I felt like I got cheated twice. First by him, then by the way it ended. No closure, just silence. Like I was just a phase he regretted. I leaned back, folding my arms. He'll regret more than that soon. Vanessa looked up, surprised. You're planning something? Only the truth. In its most undeniable form. She took a long sip of her coffee, then said, let me know if I can help. That night, I walked her to her car. She turned before getting in, her hand on the door, her face framed by the dim streetlight. You don't have to go through this alone, Michael. I know, I said. She kissed my cheek, light as breath, and drove off without looking back. Back home, Natalie was watching a movie, wrapped in a blanket on the couch. She looked up and paused it when I walked in. You were out. Yeah, I said, taking off my jacket. Met someone for coffee. Oh, who? Vanessa, the woman I bought the bookshelf from. Her posture stiffened. Really? That's unexpected. I had questions. She had answers. I let the words settle like sediment in water. Her expression was frozen, unreadable. What kind of answers? The kind you already know. She swallowed, her lips parting as if to speak, but I walked past her before she could. I'm going to bed, I said. Long day. I heard her call after me softly. Michael, can we talk? Soon, I said without turning. I didn't sleep that night, but I wasn't restless either. It was the stillness of a storm gathering on the horizon, knowing that when it came, it would change everything. It took Natalie 3 days to gather the courage to confront what was unspoken but omnipresent between us. During those 3 days, the house felt like a museum of moments frozen in time. We spoke about the mail, groceries, and whether the water heater was acting up again. But none of it mattered. Not really. Our real lives, our emotional lives, had moved to different timelines. Hers was trying to reclaim what was slipping, and mine was carefully orchestrating how to let it go. On the evening of the 3rd day, I returned from work to find the dining room dimly lit by candles. Natalie had set the table with our nicer plates, the ones reserved for holidays or guests we wanted to impress. There were 2 glasses of wine, already poured. The scent of rosemary chicken floated in the air, too rich to be casual. A playlist hummed from her phone. Jazz, not too sentimental, but unmistakably intentional. I paused at the doorway. Can we talk now? She asked, her voice quieter than the music. I walked in slowly, set my keys down on the console table, and looked at the wine. Then at her. Her makeup was subtle, almost apologetic. Her eyes carried the weight of rehearsed lines she hadn't quite settled on. Talk, I said. She sat, but I remained standing for a moment longer, just enough to unsettle the balance she was trying to create. I don't know how to begin, she said. Try. I replied, still not touching the wine. She clasped her hands together, fingers interlocked so tightly her knuckles paled. I made a mistake. I slowly took the seat opposite her. You made a series of them. Consistent, deliberate ones. Not impulsive, not accidental. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to get caught. A pause, then a shaky exhale. It wasn't love. It was attention. I felt invisible for so long, and Greg, made me feel noticed. Seen. So you disappeared from your own marriage to feel visible in someone else's shadow. She winced. I know. It sounds pathetic. It is, I said flatly. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I offered her no comfort. No napkin. No out. She had to sit with it. I didn't expect it to go on so long, she whispered. It was supposed to be a distraction, a detour. And then I got lost. You got comfortable. She nodded. I have proof of everything, I continued. Messages, photos, hotel logs, video. She looked stunned. You had me followed? I observed. You acted. There's a difference. The weight of that landed. She looked down at her lap, her hands now limp, resting on the table. Are you going to leave me? She asked after a pause. I haven't decided. Her expression crumpled. The lack of a definitive answer was somehow more painful than a final judgment. What do you want from me, Michael? Just tell me. I'll do it. I leaned forward. You're going to write it all down. Every detail. Timeline. Where, when, how many times. I want every lie you told me written in your own hand. She stared. You want a confession? No, I said. I want the truth. On paper. So you can never say it didn't happen. So you can never pretend it was less than it was. And so I can remind myself that I wasn't crazy for sensing what you worked so hard to hide. Tears fell freely now. She nodded, slowly, brokenly. Okay. And you're moving into the guest room, I added. Her eyes widened slightly. For how long? Until I decide what happens next. She nodded again, silently. That night, we didn't speak again. She moved her things quietly. I watched from the hallway, arms crossed. Her suitcase rolled behind her like a shamed pet. Once she was out of the master bedroom, I closed the door, locked it, and stood in the silence. I slept soundly for the first time in months. The next morning, a folded piece of paper sat beside the coffee maker. It was her handwritten confession, sealed with a paperclip. I didn't read it. Instead, I picked up my phone and texted Vanessa. Coffee later? Her response came within seconds. Yes. I tucked the letter into a drawer, untouched, and dressed for the day. Not for confrontation. Not for closure. Just for clarity. Vanessa chose the same cafe we'd met at before, tucked away between a bookstore and a florist that always seemed to smell of rain and roses. When I arrived, she was already there, seated by the window this time, a deliberate choice. There was light on her face, no shadows to retreat into. We were done hiding. She smiled softly as I sat down, a knowing kind of smile, neither triumphant nor sorrowful. Just real. You look better, she said. I slept. That helps. We ordered coffee without needing to ask each other what we wanted. There was something comforting in the small rituals, two people forced into intimacy not by romance, but by betrayal. And in that, a strange solidarity had formed. We didn't have to pretend with each other. We'd already seen the ugliest truths. She confessed, I said, stirring my drink slowly. Vanessa's brow lifted slightly. Spoken or written? Both. She gave me the letter this morning. Did you read it? Not yet. I think I needed to see you first. That surprised her. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. I get that. More than you know. A silence settled between us, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence people earn, the kind that says we've already said the worst things and still showed up again. I think I hated myself more than I hated Greg, she admitted suddenly. For not seeing it. For letting him lie to me for so long. And when I found out, I thought about telling you, and then I nearly didn't. I almost let it go, stayed out of it. But then I thought, if it were me, if someone knew and said nothing, I'd want them to say something. You did the right thing, I said. You showed me the part of my life I wasn't brave enough to face. She looked at me, visibly moved by that. You were brave, just quiet about it. I smiled faintly. That's one way of putting it. We talked for over an hour. About Natalie, about Greg, about what it was like to walk through a battlefield pretending everything was fine. Vanessa spoke about the months before she broke up with Greg, how she could feel the emotional distance even when he was holding her hand. His phone was always face down. That's how it started. Then the late nights, the sudden coldness. I thought it was work stress. He said it was. And maybe part of it was. But the rest? She shook her head. He was already in love with someone else's wife. I looked out the window. The bookstore sign across the street swayed gently in the breeze. She asked if I was going to leave her. What did you say? I told her I didn't know. Do you? I thought for a long moment. I know I can't go back to how things were. Whether we stay together or not, the man who trusted her blindly is gone. Vanessa reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. It was warm, soft, but steady. You don't have to decide today. I know, but I think I already have. She didn't ask for details. She didn't need to. The look we shared said enough. Later that night, I read the letter. Every word, every detail. Natalie had poured out her version of events in 10 handwritten pages. She wrote about feeling lost, unseen, aging in a way she couldn't accept. Greg had been the mirror that told her she was still desirable, still powerful. But even in her admission, there were defenses, justifications, excuses framed as vulnerabilities. She ended the letter with a plea. Please don't let this be the end of us. I folded it, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it in a locked drawer. It wasn't anger I felt. It wasn't even grief. It was clarity. The next morning, I made breakfast for one. I didn't wait for her. I didn't call her name. Natalie appeared eventually, wrapped in her robe, eyes puffy from tears she thought she'd hidden. Morning, she said, voice brittle. I nodded. There's coffee. She sat but didn't eat. I read your letter, I said. She looked up, searching for something in my face. Thank you for writing it, I added. It told me everything I needed to know. She blinked, uncertain. And I stood, took my plate to the sink. And I'll let you know when I've made my decision. Then I left the kitchen. And this time, she didn't follow. A week passed. Natalie kept to the guest room, honoring the boundary I'd drawn. She cooked less, spoke even less, and when she did, her words came out like questions, never sure whether she was still allowed to speak to me. I didn't offer reassurance. I didn't speak more than necessary. Not out of cruelty, out of discipline. She left the house less. Her world shrank to our walls, as if exile into her own guilt was the only penance she could afford. I noticed her staring out the window often, not at anything specific, just out. Like she was waiting for the version of herself she used to be to come walking up the drive. I didn't check her phone. I didn't read the letter again. I didn't need to. Instead, I filled my time with clarity. I returned to the gym, took longer walks, read books I'd abandoned months ago, and I saw Vanessa. We didn't speak about Natalie and Greg as much anymore. There wasn't much left to say. What had begun as shared fallout had slowly become something else, something quietly magnetic. It was a Thursday night when she invited me to her place again. No bookshelf this time. No pretense. She made dinner, simple but intimate. Pasta, wine, candles. There was music, but softer than the last time. Her apartment was clean, but not staged. It felt like a space someone lived in without apology. I liked that. After dinner, we sat on her couch, each holding a glass, feet tucked beneath us like teenagers unsure how to touch. I didn't think I'd be here again, she said. Neither did I. She looked at me for a long time. Do you think it's wrong? What? This? Us? Whatever this is becoming. I leaned forward, placing my glass on the table. No, I think what they did was wrong. I think what we're doing is surviving it. She set her glass down beside mine. I used to think closure meant getting answers. But maybe it's not, she said. Maybe it's just knowing you deserve better than the questions. She kissed me then. It wasn't hesitant. It wasn't desperate. It was two people, bruised but breathing, reaching for something that didn't feel like a mistake. The kiss deepened, slow and unhurried. Her hand slid to my chest, fingers tracing the edge of my collarbone. Mine settled on her hip, anchoring me. There was no rush, no guilt, just a quiet unraveling of months of tension. That night, we slept together. Not as a rebellion, not as revenge, but as an inevitability. When I woke in her bed the next morning, her head resting against my shoulder, I didn't feel regret. I felt relief. Back home, Natalie was in the kitchen when I walked in. She turned at the sound of the door, eyes searching mine. You didn't come home last night. No. A pause. Were you with her? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She nodded slowly. I deserve that. I poured coffee, leaned against the counter. This isn't punishment, Natalie. It's consequence. I gave you space to own your actions. Now I'm owning mine. Her voice cracked. So is this it? Are we done? I'm not ready to make declarations. But I'm not putting my life on hold while you sit in limbo. If you want to rebuild something, you'll have to show me why it's worth it. Words won't do. She lowered her gaze. I don't know how to fix this. Then don't fix it. Start something new. Something honest. With or without me. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving her there, a woman sitting in the ruins of her own choices. That afternoon, Vanessa and I walked by the lake. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. She reached for my hand. I let her take it. I wasn't looking for a replacement. I wasn't running away. I was walking forward, one step at a time. The days that followed were filled with quiet certainties. I no longer found myself analyzing Natalie's expressions, her tone, or her schedule. That scrutiny had evaporated, replaced by something less volatile but more final. A quiet detachment. I didn't hate her. There wasn't enough left in me to hate. What I felt was distance. Not emotional, not metaphorical, literal, measurable distance. Vanessa and I became routine. Not rushed, not labeled, just consistent. We met 3 times that week. Once for lunch, once at her place, once for a late-night walk under a sky smeared with clouds. The intimacy between us wasn't defined by physical contact anymore. It was defined by presence. No roles to play. No past to hide. Just breath and time. Natalie noticed the shift. She didn't question it anymore. There were no dramatic scenes, no last-ditch efforts. Just silence, broken occasionally by a stilted question about bills or a half-hearted mention of old friends. Then, one Saturday morning, she asked me to sit. I joined her at the dining table, noticing the small stack of paper in front of her. Typed. Stapled. What's this? My proposal, she said. A plan. If there's a path forward. If you'd even consider it. I thought I should show you that I'm willing to work for it. I flipped through the pages. It wasn't emotional pleading. It was practical, therapy sessions scheduled, personal reflections, a timeline of transparency. A signed waiver for financial disclosures. Even a list of the people she'd already told about the affair, her sister, her closest friends, her manager. She had outed herself to the world she had once carefully compartmentalized. You're serious, I said. I am, she replied. I know it doesn't undo anything. But if I stay, I want to earn that right. I nodded slowly. That's more than I expected. Do you think there's hope? I think there's a chance at honesty. That's all I ever asked for. Later that day, I showed Vanessa the document. I didn't have to, but I wanted to. She read it silently, then handed it back. She's trying, she said. Yes. And what do you want? I want peace. I want truth. I want something that doesn't feel like compromise. I'm just not sure where that leaves me. She nodded. I won't stand in your way. You're not in my way, I said. You're the only part that makes sense right now. We didn't resolve anything that day. That wasn't the point. Instead, Vanessa drove us out of the city to a vineyard. It was a crisp, clear afternoon. We sipped wine in silence, walking between rows of amber-leaved vines. I felt the sun on my face and something like forgiveness in the air, less a pardon, more a release. The next morning, Natalie was already dressed when I came downstairs. She had a duffel bag by the door. I'm staying with my sister for a few days, she said, to give you space, and to think without you in the room. Okay, I said. She hesitated, then added, I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm still going to earn it, even if you've already decided. She left. The house felt lighter. Not empty, just breathable. I stood in the kitchen, drinking coffee, rereading her letter one more time. For the first time, I didn't feel the stab of betrayal when I looked at it. I felt closure creeping in from the edges. That evening, I went to Vanessa's apartment. She opened the door, eyes warm but unreadable. She's gone. For now. Are you all right? I think I'm finally becoming all right. She stepped aside to let me in. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was walking into a life I chose. Weeks passed. Natalie remained at her sister's, and though she checked in sporadically, sometimes a text, sometimes a short email, there was no pressure. No pleading. Just quiet acknowledgments that she was doing the work she claimed she'd begun. I didn't respond to every message. When I did, It was neutral, honest, and short. I owed her clarity, not comfort. My own clarity took shape slowly. I reviewed her proposals several times. It wasn't a manipulation. That much was clear. Natalie had, in her own way, begun dismantling the illusions she had clung to for so long. She had started seeing herself without the curated lens of image or control. There was merit in that. But merit isn't the same as healing. Meanwhile, Vanessa and I became something stable. We didn't name it. We didn't rush. But there was a rhythm now, a calm frequency we both had tuned into. We were honest, even when it was uncomfortable. We didn't compare scars, we acknowledged them. And sometimes, in the silence between us, we found a kind of comfort that didn't need explanation. One night, after dinner at her place, she turned to me with a look that was more contemplation than concern. "Are you still deciding?" I didn't pretend not to know what she meant. "I'm not deciding between you and her," I said. "That choice made itself a long time ago. What I'm deciding is how I want to live the rest of my life, and who I want to be when I finally walk out of the smoke." Vanessa nodded. She never tried to compete. That's what I appreciated most. "Whatever you choose," she said, "don't choose it out of guilt." "I won't. I mean it, Michael. Don't stay with her to fix what she broke. Don't stay with me because I feel safer. Choose because it's true." I kissed her forehead. "I will." The final conversation with Natalie happened on a Sunday. She asked to meet at a park near our old church, neutral ground. I agreed. She was early. I recognized the way she stood under the tree, arms crossed, posture unsure. When she saw me, she smiled faintly, a ghost of the woman I married. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Of course." We sat on a bench. Children played in the distance. Leaves rustled, hinting at a coming autumn. "I've been in therapy," she began. 3 times a week. I've told everyone. About what I did. About what I lost." "I know," I said. "I'm not here to ask you to come back. I think I finally understand that's not my place. I'm here because I need you to know I am sorry. Not in the way people say it to move forward. I'm sorry in the way that lives in your bones. I betrayed the one person who loved me honestly, and I have to live with that." I didn't respond right away. I let the weight of her words settle. "Thank you," I finally said. "That means more than you know." She nodded, and for a moment, she looked like someone set free by surrender. "Are you happy?" she asked. "I'm becoming happy." She smiled again. It was bittersweet, but real. "Then I'll stop fighting it." We said our goodbyes with a hug that wasn't awkward. It was final. Not an open door, not a promise of another chapter. Just closure. Clean, respectful, done. That night, I returned to Vanessa's. We opened a bottle of wine and sat on her balcony, the city lights glowing like embers. "I closed the door," I said. "I know," she replied. "You look different." I smiled. "Lighter." "No," she said, smiling back. "Whole." We didn't toast. We didn't declare a new beginning. We just clinked glasses, took a sip, and leaned into the stillness. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't surviving anything. I was living.